All right, so let's get some more insights into the $16.5 trillion climate change agreement hammered out over the weekend in Paris. Despite some disagreements and doubts over the deal sealed at the Paris Climate Conference, delegates welcomed the landmark climate deal in Paris. The global summit agreed on a deal setting the course for a historic transformation of the world's fossil fuel-driven economy within decades in a bid to arrest global warming.
After 4 years of talks fraught at the UN, with conversations often pitting the interests of rich nations against poor, imperiled island states against rising economic powerhouses, French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius declared the pact adopted to the standing applause and whistles of delegates from almost 200 nations.
When historians look back on this day, very historic day, they will say that global cooperation to secure a future safe from climate change took a dramatic U-turn here in Paris. Today, we can look into the eyes of our children, our grandchildren, and we can finally tell them that we have joined hands to bequeath a more habitable world to them and to future generations.
Hailed as the first truly global climate deal, committing both rich and poor nations to reining in rising emissions blamed for warming the planet, it sets out a sweeping long-term goal of eliminating net man-made greenhouse gas output this century.
It is an agreement of conviction. It is an agreement of solidarity with the most vulnerable. It is an agreement of long-term vision, because it is an agreement of commitment to turn this new legal framework into the engine of safe growth for all for the rest of this century.
Despite general consentment, some, such as India's Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar, have criticized the deal for setting too low a bar for success. Scientists warn that the envisaged national emissions cuts will not be enough to keep warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius.
While give and take is a normal in negotiations, we are of the opinion that the agreement could have been more ambitious. We share the concerns of several friends that agreement does not put us on the path to prevent temperature rise below 2 degrees, and that actions of developed countries are far below their historical responsibilities and fair share. We have, in the spirit of compromise, agreed on a number of phrases, and the agreement is here.
For the first time, the world has agreed on a longer-term aspiration for reaching a peak in greenhouse emissions as soon as possible and achieving a balance between output of man-made greenhouse gases and absorption by forests or the oceans by the second half of this century.
December 12, 2015 will remain a great date for the planet. In Paris, there have been lots of revolutions for centuries, but it's the most beautiful and the most peaceful of the revolutions which has been achieved today. The revolution for climate change.
The effects of climate change is also being felt here in Africa. Let's take a look at a story from Senegal, where faced with booming Asian demand, the Senegalese government, situated in the densely forested Central African belt, are losing the battle against timber traffickers who form a part of a $100 billion illegal trade. In southern Casamance, the last clumps of a dense forest that once concealed the sky are being destroyed, frequently by traffickers smuggling it across the borders to Gambia to meet Chinese quarters as officials turn a blind eye. These forests, part of a huge regional carbon sink, are the last defense against the advancing desert, a driving force behind European migration.
When Idrissa Bald, mayor of a small community in southern Senegal, blew the whistle on illegal logging in a nearby forest reserve, he said the government agents charged with protecting the trees proposed the deal to keep him quiet. For many, the problem most African countries face in enforcing high-minded policies supposed to counter deforestation and its effects on environments already is vulnerable to climate change. With a small amendment to wording, the forestry official said the official paperwork could be made to show the trees were felled outside the Dabo National Reserve in unprotected forest, allowing the mayor's office to take a cut of the proceeds.
My goal was not to make money, but to stop and punish these operators, these criminals by law. As the chairman of the Environment Committee said, we should withdraw all logging permit for at least 10 years so that these operators can go elsewhere and find other activities other than cutting down trees.
The Forest Ministry in southern region of Casamance, whose main city is Ziguinchor, rejected BALD's version of events. Colonel Ali Sek, the ministry's regional representative, denied any corruption attempt and blamed BALD for the destruction in the Dabo forest. However, the dilemmas faced by officials like BALD, many of whom are less inclined to take a stand against corruption, show the limitations of such measures. Senegal has been a leading African voice for improving the management of natural resources. A planned Great Green Wall from its capital Dakar across the continent to Djibouti in East Africa aims to create a natural forest barrier against the southward expansion of the Sahara Desert.
Who's going to benefit from these woods? It's the Chinese and the Gambians. The Gambians and Chinese leave their forests to come and exploit ours. They also exploit our people who don't know any better by giving them pennies to keep quiet so that they can exploit our forest where we are losing millions and millions.
Chief amongst those consumer countries is China. Over the past decade, as African governments have tried to curb illicit logging, Chinese customs data show annual imports of timber products from West and Central African countries increased more than fourfold to $1.9 billion in 2014. More worrying are the countries where there is little evidence. Authorities are even trying to crack down on illegal practices. Among them is Democratic Republic of Congo, home to much of the Congo Basin, the world's second largest tropical forest after the Amazon.
If there was work here, we would stop what we're doing. But there is no work here. There are many people, but not enough jobs. You have to go into the bush and cut down trees to be able to eat.
While much smaller Senegal's forests concentrated in Casamance serve as a bulwark against regional desertification, the government has therefore banned timber exports. But local people claim wood from the region is simply sent into Gambia, a sliver of a country wedged into Senegal, which allows wood harvested in neighboring nations to be exported via its ports.
This wood here cannot bring rain. We cannot cultivate it. And that's all the people live on. Where do you think the cattle live? And what about the cows and others? We live off them. Now, if we start destroying our forest and selling it to other countries, who is losing? It's the people, not the other countries, especially the local populations.
In a testament to the state's efforts to stop the illicit trade, 9 seized trucks with Gambian license plates were parked in the local office of Senegal's forestry department. Nonetheless, villagers and ecologists said much of the smuggling occurs under the noses or even with the complicity of government agents. Senegal's Environment Ministry declined to comment on these.
What's happening in other forests threatens our forests here too. That's what our cry for warning is about. What we want is for all of this to stop because we don't have the means to fight this phenomenon.
However, some officials are trying to make positive changes. Dissatisfied with the 1.5 million CFA franc fine paid by a man charged with illegal logging in Dabo, Mayor BALD says he has filed a legal complaint with the prosecutor's office.
So the World Trade Organization will hold its 10th Ministerial Conference in Africa this week. The meeting will be held in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, from the 15th to the 18th. This is the first time in the organization's 20 years of existence that this ministerial conference, that's the highest decision-making forum, will be held in Africa. Negotiators from some 162 countries will fly into Nairobi, many of them hoping they can strike a deal that will create a fair and leveled ground for a global trading system. We'll come back after the break. We'll talk about Nigeria's November inflation. Stick around.